Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about what I believe, in my opinion, is the most difficult zodiac sign. And yes, this does apply and pertain to the sun, moon, and ascendant. First off, before I start talking about this subject, well, I want to expound and elaborate on this a little. When I'm talking about the most difficult zodiac sign, what I'm referring to is the most difficult in terms of getting along with. So the hardest zodiac sign to get along with, actually, in my opinion. So anyway, well, first off, I want to talk about Aries. Well, Aries could be very outspoken, forthright, really free in their speech, so to speak. They can be very cutting with their remarks, and they can also become very infuriated quickly. But the thing about Aries is they're very quick with their statements, but they will often forgive and forget very quickly and are not really known to be vindictive and vengeful. And I think the thing about Aries is I don't see them as being the most difficult zodiac sign, is because their impatience actually is beneficial in certain ways, and I'm going to elaborate on that. Well, they're too impatient, I think, to really stay and really argue a point forever, or not really forever, but what I should say is indefinitely with someone, or to be or to a point where they want to just keep proving that they're right and the other person is wrong, like the sign I'm going to get to at the end of the video. The thing about them is they just don't have that persistence in them to be doing that. But don't get me wrong, Aries are very single-minded though, and they're very set in terms of their purpose. So, and they're often, Aries will often stand up for those that can't stand up for themselves. This is not the sign I think is the most difficult to get along with. Now, anyway, the next sign I talk about is Taurus. Now, a lot of people may think Taurus is a good candidate for this. Taurus can be really headstrong and obstinate and downright bullheaded in a very negative manifestation. But the thing about Taurus is they are very, actually can be very passive, docile, and peace-loving. And they're not really ones that often want to make waves. Yes, they are a fixed sign. They could be very, they're very much about persistence and tenacity, and they very hard to change their mind once it's made up. But they do have a very soft, easygoing side to their nature, and they may arguably be the most easygoing of all the fixed signs, actually. So for me, it's really hard for me to say that they are the ones that would be considered. Taurus would not be considered the most difficult zodiac sign, at least to me. Anyway, next sign to talk about is Gemini. Well, Gemini, mutable sign, it's very hard for me to think they would be the most difficult zodiac sign. I understand what's difficult about Gemini is that they could often be very fickle and mercurial, and sometimes you don't know who you're getting one moment to the next with Gemini. They're very versatile and multifaceted, though, positively, as far as projection. But as far as they are very adaptable and pliable, and they'll often see the opinions of others. They are ones, too, that will not really stay around and argue a point for a protracted period. They will often take off to avoid a scene because they could be strongly averse to bickering and warfare. So for me, looking at Gemini, it just doesn't seem to me that they are so lighthearted, whimsical, and vivacious. They are not the ones that I would consider at all really to be even a candidate for the most difficult zodiac sign. Now, the next sign I want to talk about is the zodiac sign Cancer. Now, as far as Cancer goes, well, what's difficult about them, of course, is naturally their temperamental, moody side. They could be very changeable. Sometimes, maybe in some cases, whenever the moon changes signs, they could really vacillate as far as their moods go. But they are, Cancer is very sympathetic and compassionate, and they are indeed the nurturers of the zodiac. They can be very warm-hearted and caring people, and really they are one of the bigger rescuers in astrology, I think. I'd say them and Pisces are probably the two biggest rescuers. So it's very hard for me to see them as being the most difficult. They're generally not very confrontational. So for those reasons, I don't think Cancer is the most difficult zodiac sign. Next sign I want to talk about is Virgo. Virgo can be seen in certain ways as being difficult, given that they could be somewhat persnickety, judgmental, and critical. But it's often about constructive criticism with them, and they will often do so to constructively help others. They could seem like these very constant editors, though they'll often be editing and correcting, revising, so to speak, if you will, what other people are saying, but they're also very service oriented, and they often will help others out, and generally, very rarely, I think, in an officious or unwanted manner. I had a friend with mine that worked with me at a Kmart one time, and he had Virgo rising. I mean, and he went really the extra mile to help out in a situation. We were trying to move a pallet jack or something one day, and it got stuck. And I mean, while everyone else was basically standing around, he got on his hands and knees and actually looked under tried to stare under the pallet to see what was actually holding it up. So, I mean, that pretty much epitomizes Virgo energy. So I don't see Virgo as being the most difficult zodiac sign. So next sign up. Talking about Libra. Well, Libra I don't see as the most difficult zodiac sign either. Libra can be very refined, charming, diplomatic. They are very often careful in how they articulate things because they don't want to come off as brusque or offensive to others. They're not about making waves. Libra is strongly dominated by peace and harmony. They really don't, I mean, they're very cultured often, and they're not ones that are about being difficult with others. Libras, I mean, they will fight and stand up for their beliefs when necessary when something is connected with injustice, because of course the sign simply can abhor injustice. But given all this, I think, for me, Libra, it would certainly not be the one that would be the most difficult zodiac sign. They're often about reconciliation and can often be very fair-minded and equitable, and will often listen to what the other person has to say, even if they don't really quite agree with it. So anyway, well, the next sign up is Scorpio. Now, Scorpio can obviously be a very viable candidate for the most difficult zodiac signs. Scorpio can actually be very vengeful and vindictive, and they can often hold grudges for a pretty long time, and they really have a very sneaky and surreptitious side too. I mean, Scorpio is a master at getting even if somebody has crossed them. Now but the thing about Scorpio is what I would say for them not being the most difficult zodiac sign. I think what helps is the fact that it is a water sign, and water signs could be very empathetic and compassionate. So they do have that soft side to them. It's just hard to pierce and penetrate it with Scorpios until you really get to know them strongly. And Scorpio also can have a strong propensity and ability to transform themselves and perhaps others in a very positive manner. The positive Scorpio can be very inspirational and motivational. So anyway, no, I don't see Scorpio as the most difficult zodiac signs. I think they could be one of the most difficult, though. They might actually be number 2 on my list. But anyway, next sign up. Well, Sagittarius, I think by far is not really the most difficult zodiac sign. Sagittarius can be very jocular, jovial, whimsical, fun-loving. They often like to engage in practical jokes and are good for laughs. They could even turn the most despondent group of people into a very effervescent and positive group. And they are really, they could turn them into happy campers very quickly. And they often have an expansive, exuberant energy that can rub off strongly on other people. I mean, they are the pepper-uppers. They are the ones of the zodiac that really try to stay positive, and even in the most adverse adverse situations, will try to be upbeat and optimistic and try to have that rub off on other people, and very philosophical. And it's hard not to learn something from a Sagittarius. They're often very easygoing as well, despite the fact they're a fire sign. They are a mutable sign, of course. So anyway, no, I don't see them as the most difficult zodiac sign. Next sign up is Capricorn. Well, Capricorn can actually be almost the antithesis of Sagittarius in a way, because where Sagittarius can actually make the most despondent or disconsolate group of people very effervescent and upbeat. So sadly, Capricorn can have the opposite effect. I don't think they are the most difficult sign of the zodiac, but Capricorn can really, they could be somewhat melancholy, and sometimes their negative and pessimistic outlook can sometimes rub off on people in a negative fashion. However, the really strong, admirable trait about Capricorn that I see is really their consistency. And the fact is that they are consistent, and they can be consistent in virtually every aspect. Remember, many of you may have remembered renowned head coach of football, Don Shula. So many people use the word consistent to describe him in consistency. And if I remember right, he has a sun in Capricorn. Many of you may remember when Dennis Rodman played NBA in basketball. He was a relentless rebounder. He has a Capricorn Ascendant, and you talk about consistency going as far as his rebounding and his work ethic when he played. But that being said, the point I'm making is that their consistency is such where even as a friend, they could be very consistent, and they could often remember others when other people might have forgotten about you. So, and I think, and really Capricorn is very ambitious, and they could be very industrious and hardworking. I don't see Capricorn as being the most difficult zodiac sign. They're very disciplined and will often hold off on saying something to somebody that might actually be very hurtful and regrettable, because their strong discipline can prevent them from doing so. So no, I don't see Capricorn as the most difficult zodiac sign. Now, getting to Aquarius. Well, obviously Aquarius is a fixed sign, so in a lot of people's mind, they can qualify for being the most difficult zodiac sign. But Aquarius, despite being fixed, it can often be very amiable and amicable. They often have very good speaking abilities, being an air sign. They're often strongly connected with consideration and being unobtrusive. They can also possess very strong humanitarian and selfless qualities, could be the universal friend. Now, I understand Aquarius can also be very fixed in their ways, their beliefs. They're also very progressive, though, and are open-minded to doing things that are new, but they are very fixed in what they and really in their beliefs. Once they are set, that could be it. So their thinking can be a little bit paradoxical, but I mean, Aquarius is such where they are still open-minded to others, and they could be very friendly and amicable and make friends often wherever they go. So to me, it's hard for me to say they are the most difficult zodiac sign. I don't see them as being that. So next sign, Pisces. Well, Pisces certainly, at least to me, does not qualify anywhere close to being the most difficult zodiac sign. I understand how negatively, manifested Pisces can sometimes be very duplicitous and deceptive, and they often, blend in with groups, and that's not always the bad thing. But if it's with negative groups, sometimes even they could be very impressionable, and they take on those traits of those people they're around. So. But the thing about Pisces is, being a mutable sign, they're very adaptable, flexible. They can often make the best out of adverse situations, and they are strongly about being compassionate and self-sacrifice. Pisces emotions can be really all-encompassing. They are very sensitive, but they could also be sensitive to what others need, and will often sacrifice their own material possessions to help others. Pisces, of all the signs, probably, I'd say likely is the one most averse to things on a material plane. So, and they're also very passive, and they're not ones to be confrontational. They often are about their solitude, isolation, and seclusion. It's often to get away from the harshness of the outer world. They often like to retreat into their fantasy world. Pisces, I don't see as being the most difficult zodiac sign. Now, finally, I'm going to get to what I believe is the most difficult zodiac sign, and it is Leo, in my opinion. And what I think about Leo, in summation, to really just sum it up before I go into more specific reasons on this, Leo is a fixed sign, of course, so I think that's really part of the criteria right there. And also being a fire sign, you wonder, well, what does that have to do with it? Well, the fact that it's a fire sign as well, okay, it's fixed in purpose, so it could be very, very willful energy and very intransigent energy, but being a fire sign as well can be very disputatious and argumentative as well. And what it is about, but Leo, there's something with them. I mean, when you look at Leo, I think they can often take it to heart more, of course, pun intended. If somebody disputes or disagrees with them, even if it's in a constructive manner, perhaps a lot of this is attributed to their pride, which of course can be exorbitant. Now, Leo, the thing about this is, of all the signs of the zodiac, they're the ones that will probably take the longest, if ever, to admit they're wrong. Now, some may admit it, and then you might have these others that just really can't admit it when they've made some kind of mishap. It's almost catastrophic to a lot of these people, I've noticed. And another thing about Leo too is that they often seem to think that others should revolve around them the way the Earth may revolve around the Sun. They're almost like the antithesis of Aquarius, like that. Given, naturally they are the opposite sign of Aquarius. Aquarius will often revolve around others, where Leo, it's really the other way around. And the thing about Leo too is sometimes I think they, of all the zodiac signs, probably have the most tremendous difficulty in seeing something like a derogatory remark about them, or something negative or adverse about themselves. And I'm not saying that all the Leos think they're infallible or flawless, but there are some, I think, that think they at least kind of exude that energy, like they feel they're pretty close to it. And I think that could be tied into certain arrogance with them, I believe. And the thing about this is, remember that Leo is also the sign. It's connected with attention. Leos are often about notoriety, exposure, recognition. Don't get me wrong, Leo has a lot of positive characteristics and attributes. They could be very flamboyant. They have ability to be, they're all strongly about presence, and they're very charismatic. But I think when you have certain Leos in a very negative manifestation, you have some that can be about, if they're not getting it especially, they could wind up deflecting it on to somebody else negatively. And really, because sometimes they're taking maybe negative attention off themselves maybe and putting it on someone else. They know how to get accolades and notoriety and recognition, but I think they know how to do it to others. And sometimes it can be in another way. I had this one person online one time. It was somebody that had commented about me, and apparently, from what he said, he has a Leo ascendant, this person that made this derogatory remark about me. And he said something like, I think he even spelled my name wrong. He said Edward, or if I'm not mistaken, I never liked Edward. That saying I was too slow, and that I sanitize comments or something, or I don't allow comments, and that bothered him. And if I'm not mistaken, he said he had a Leo ascendant, I think, at least in one of his videos or something, or maybe on a comment, I forget, comment on YouTube. But the point I'm making is, when you have a negative Leo energy, I think because they're the sign is so synonymous with attention, they have an innate ability to get it for themselves, but they also can somehow get it toward other people, and it's not always in a positive manner. So anyway, the thing about it too is that, going back to Leo and why I think they're the most difficult sign, it's the fact that they, in a negative manifestation, the narcissistic qualities as well about them. And they're often, there's Leos out there, I think more so than the other zodiac signs, that can be so almost enraptured and enamored with themselves and their abilities and this and that. And you look at, I think, the U.S. President Donald Trump, he's the almost the king of this, no pun intended, of course. Yeah, right. There is one actually, but he's almost epitomizes Leo energy strongly. He has Leo ascendant at 29 degrees, and he is the one that, it seems like he'll often be talking about himself, and he's about lauding himself and talking about all his positive qualities and that he's done this, he's accomplished that. And I understand that in a way. A lot of that is to counteract a lot of the negative press he has received. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a Donald Trump hater. I don't think he's really that bad or anything. But he does exemplify Leo energy very strongly, I believe. I mean, he has it at 29 degrees, and I think he's got it in terms of like the minutes of arc at like 58. So he's really down, I mean, I see that as the real, 29 degrees of Leo, I see as the full culmination of that sign. And two, I think too that Leo's often, and what makes them the most difficult zodiac sign too to deal with. I mean, they are, not just to get along, but just dealing with in general, is that they often can have a very inflated and distorted view of themselves. If somebody, makes some remark or something, and they think it's something that just even it's a slight chance it may pertain to them, it's some subtle remark or something that they'll construe. I'm sorry, if they construe it as some subtle reference or something cryptic about them, if someone were to say something like in conversation near them, that that person really is very extravagant, spends a lot of money, and this and that. Aren't you tired of people that are so much into themselves? And they, the Leo of all the signs, I think, would be the ones that say, think, oh, maybe they were talking about me because they have this view of this self-importance regarding themselves. So that's another thing about Leo. What makes them difficult is that you could not even be saying anything about them, and they might be ready to make some response or rebuttal to it because of that, and it can incite a situation. But what I want to close with is that I'm talking about Leo, of course, and again, not to be overly redundant, in a very negative manifestation and expression. A lot of Leos are not this bad. I don't think. Leos are, they have a lot of good qualities. They're the most dominant zodiac sign. I think they're also, the most generous. Leo is very magnanimous. They're very gregarious. They will often go out and take that time to meet people and get themselves their exposure to the outer world, where a lot of other signs such as like Cancer or Pisces are more timid and may not have that ability to do that as consistently as Leo. And they're also awesome entertainers as well, and they have a very not quite as much as Sagittarius, but they have a very positive outlook, and they feel they could conquer many things. They're often very one of the they often go out to be the best at what it is they're attempting to accomplish. You look at many of you may have remembered legendary NBA star Wilt Chamberlain. When he played, he was one of the most dominant players out there. He had his sun in Leo. So you look at these people out there that have Leo strong in their chart. When I say Leo strong or prominent, of course I'm talking about Sun, Moon, or Ascendant. So they do have. There's Leos out there that are very positive, and they're and many of them are born leaders. NFL quarterback Kirk Cousins has his sun in Leo, and he is one, of course, that he leads. He's really one of those leaders in many ways, and by example as well. And he's one, he's an NFL quarterback, and he's the one that really is like one of the leaders on his team, and they just seem like they're just naturally design Leos to be in a leadership position as opposed to a subordinate or a subservient one. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for what I believe is the most difficult zodiac sign. Stay tuned next time, where I'll be giving you my Aquarius April 2018 horoscope forecast. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.